Shattered dreams, wounded hearts, and broken toys. Give them all, give them all. Give them all to Jesus, and He will turn your sorrow into joy. Give them all to Jesus, lay them down. Jason, good morning. Kevin, you want me to play this and you sing this as a special this morning? In his time?
We can. Remember all the words.
Oh, we got your words, can you belt that out?
You guys sounded good together, though. Did you grab the high note? Yeah, when you grabbed that high note,
Can we do this
it
one
was
more?
bang.
You
It was
heard
good.
that, huh,
Yeah,
Mike?
it was good. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
let's
came
try that
together.
one. Kevin.
We do have a monitor.
We probably need a block or a tilt. I usually put like a little black Never mind. Yeah, you think you'll need something like that?
In his time, oh wow. He makes all things beautiful in his times. Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me to dream that you do just what you say in your time. In his time. What's that mean? In his time. Oh. Life to you I bring, your song I have to sing. To you, loving thing, in your time. In his time. In his time. You make all things beautiful in your time. Lord, life to you I bring. May your song I have to sing be to you a loving thing in your time. Lord, please show me every day you're teaching me your way, that you do just what you say in your time. In this light to you I bring, you song I have to sing, be to you a loving thing in your time, your time. That is just a pretty song. It really is.
There's another one, I can't remember, there's another one,
Yeah.
it's the same vein.
Right?
I had it in my head yesterday, I can't remember it now.
Oh, man.
Isn't
Yep.
it weird to be
I love it.
people who just have songs in their head all
Just-
the time?
just
We just
in-
always have
Yeah, just always in your head,
Well, that's because
Just-
we're musicians, we're all musicians, so that's what we hear,
just
right?
floating around.
The songs, man.
Yeah, we don't hear the tractors, we don't hear the traffic, we don't hear the cars, noisy streets. You ready? Okay, relax. Ready, Mike?
Ready when you are, man.
All right. We're gonna get started on Sunday school here. All right, we're gonna have Sunday school here. You ready, Mike?
We're ready.
You got it.
All right.
This starts
Got us in
green.
the mood, in the mood.
Green. Oh, man, beautiful.
Oh. Wow. Let's see, where are we at today? We're still in Matthew. Matthew's a long journey.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I got a good job, I can cut it on a milk carton in front of a cactus if I want to.
It's funny that you get that line, have scissors with.
Have scissors will travel.
So I started, I'm not a businessman, okay? Give me work and I can do it all day long, but I started my own little thing for a little while, and my business starts to have laptop will travel.
There you go.
That's a good line.
Well, that comes from Paladin, right? That comes from Have Gun Will Travel, right? The old TV show, right? Paladin. It's really funny. At the beginning of that show, it shows his business card, right? And it says,
has that on
and it says Paladin, Have Gun Will Travel,
Dang.
and then it says.
He has the same business.
And the funny thing is, that's the late 1800s in San Francisco, right? And the bottom of his business card says, Wire Paladin, San Francisco. So the internet was already up,
Oh,
right?
the old Morse code,
Yeah,
yeah.
because the internet was up.
Ones
They
and
had,
zeros.
you know, there was wires across the country in the late
Yeah.
1800s, zeros and ones.
Yeah.
It's still zeros and ones.
You know, I gotta find that letter that Alexander Graham Bell sent in just before he made it big, and he was talking about that. He goes, well, we're thinking, you know, about the voice thing, and AT&T answered him with, it was kind of a scolding letter from a professional to a professional. He said, that's really kind of a foolish idea. We can't figure out why people would want to hear a voice on the other side of the country when we already have telegraph, you know. And it said 7 years later, we bought the company.
We already got telegraph, man.
Yeah.
What more do we need?
I know, but you're right, dude. The internet, now we're back to ones and zeros again.
Right, but it was there.
Yeah,
Dots and dashes.
Right.
yeah,
Right. It was there. Did you
I know, crazy. I remember when they brought that up in school, it blew me away. I'm like, you're right, it was already up, you know?
It was already up in the late 1800s.
Yeah,
Wire Paladin.
that's crazy. Yeah. Oh, well.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I thought the same thing in the fiber optic world. Like, this has been around since Genesis? We never knew all these light layers were.
Right.
You know?
They just evolved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it came from the monkey's back pocket, you know? Yeah, no doubt.
Because, you know, they have back pockets.
Yeah, well, it's true.
That's the flaw of that.
It is pretty amazing creation now. You could probably give a new age sermon, still be conservative, but talk about them things, and it's mind-blowing, man. You know, to think that stuff was already here. You know, God probably looked down and laughed. Wait another 100 years, watch what else you discover, you know. Science is just catching up, man. So,
And they still have to use all the properties that God created in the first place.
that's right, yeah,
Create their own
Yeah.
properties.
yep,
Right, if it's batteries or whatever, right?
They can copy, but they still have to use material
uh-huh,
God created.
yep. You're right.
They just
And
reorganize.
look at the design.
Right.
Like at work, say we have an issue, right? Say we have an issue with one site. Okay, so we have four casinos, right? So 3 of the voice routers, okay, we have a voice router at each site. The phone calls go out, right? So, okay, so 3 of them are working, the 4th one isn't. So what do? I take the config of the working one, and I set it side by side.
Stare and compare.
We call it stare and compare. Stare and compare, you know, till we find, oh, there it is. I put the wrong IP address.
That probably was the case. Can I send that machine a Tylenol or something? Where's that button at, you know? Yeah, I know, man. I know. Dang. That's too funny, man. We'll have to do that one day, pull in some new stuff, because I remember having to write a letter for the county one time. Give us your perspective on your telecommunications background. Blah, blah, blah. Put it into a nice little thing that we can read in front of everybody. And it was only about this big, and I got so far, and I'm like, well, and then I finally, by the end of the letter, I said, well, the bottom line is, we know how to work it, but we don't necessarily understand why it works. I don't know why this electron tells this one to make a left in China, go to that router, and up this computer. Anyone who thinks they can tell you that whole story is probably making it up, but it was already here when we got here. All that stuff was already here. We just kind of grabbed it and harnessed, you know, so, yeah, I don't know. But they liked it. They probably thought, well, this dumbbell could have wrote something fantastic, and he wrote this 6th grade speech or whatever, man. That's, anyway.
Go forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's like you said, it was already here. The science was, we just had to discover and harness it, you know, so. Anyway, off we go to the book of Matthew. Welcome. If you're out in TV land, internet land, welcome. Phone land, welcome. We are in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 28 and 29. I do believe we will be leaving Sermon on the Mount after today and heading on out into probably chapter 8. We'll see if we stay in the book of Matthew. There's a lot in there. 7, verse 28 and 29. And I'll just open it with a couple of questions. So I thought to myself, can you recall 1 week in time, any week, 1 week when you could speak without sinning or start things that might have been incorrect in some way? If you can do that, tell us. There's got to be a week in your whole life that you went at least 1 week and didn't do anything incorrect or didn't sin.
I think I was born.
When you were born? The week you were born? You know, I hadn't thought about that. By flesh you were a sinner, but you know what?
Until we could reason, right?
Until we could reason?
Right.
Until we could reason.
We should have had a trophy, man, because that's a good point. That is a rock solid, yeah. We don't know good or evil at that point. Yeah, so, all right. Well, I'm going to skip that question.
No, it's a
Blue
good
clean
question.
out.
It's a good question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I gotta say, man, that is an answer I'm gonna write into the next one. How about as an adult? Let's go with adult, because yeah, that is a big correction right there. How, as an adult, can you recall 1 week? Probably not.
In coma.
Just in a coma, it's possible. I don't know if you'd be speaking, like maybe in the dream world, you know, if you're totally out of it. But I mean, if you're in the working world and up and awake.
'Cause even our
Yeah,
thoughts,
conscious
right?
mind.
God judges our thoughts, right?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah, so,
I know. And coma may be valid too.
Huh?
I don't even want to know.
And loves
I
us
know.
anyway.
Yeah.
or, you know, even a partial day, or for myself, I think, was there even an hour today that's something, I can't even recall, you know, or speaking in front of an audience like here. You've got scholars and skeptics at the same time. Not bad skepticism, just like we're doing here, like Chuck corrected us. So most of us, I mean, no. I mean, with very minor exceptions, I don't think any of us ever had a week like that. And so that was the setup for 7:28. When Jesus spoke or gave a sermon, this was commonplace for him. He never, ever made a mistake. And it might have been something that appeared to be a mistake, or it's not to say he didn't ever stub his toe or rip a pair of pants. I'm sure he did. But when he spoke, it was absolute correct and all of that. And that was the whole setting to 7. Matthew 7:28. And it came to pass, when Jesus had ended these sayings, his Sermon on the Mount, all 3 chapters of it, the people were astonished at his doctrine. For he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. They were astonished. And it means the same as are astonished. Absolutely blown away by the Sermon on the Mount. And I don't think it's because of all of so much of it was old stuff, but put into a modern context and all of that. I believe that for a couple of reasons. I mean, typically in the ancient world, if you gave a sermon or a large speech, it was already expected. There were philosophers, skeptics, scholars. It's just how it was done. You see Paul going to Mars Hill, coming into town, and there's forums for all of that going on, because there's no TV sets anywhere, so everyone's gathering for it to vet out what good philosophy is. So Jesus would have encountered that as well. Sermons given on the Old Testament would quote rabbis. So I chased this down. The scholars out there claim that any sermon in the Old Testament days and New Testament days in the beginning, to show that you know your stuff, you're not quoting journals and stuff like that like we do today. They were quoting from the rabbis. According to Rabbi so-and-so, this is what he said, and I'm going to build on that. So it's the same process. You want to validate that you know what you're talking about because you're standing on the shoulders of all these other smart folks. So same thing in any trade. You know, routers and stuff. New versions come out. They do the testing. They check with the experts, lessons learned. Okay, yeah, we're going to go with that product. So we do the same thing in common life. I think one reason that the crowd was astonished, because if you check through the Bible, and Chuck, check me if I'm wrong, if you check through the Bible, Jesus rarely at all makes references to any people other than the prophets or God's people, Moses, David, people like that. He may comment on Caesar, oh, you fox, this, that, and the other. Pay Caesar what he's due. But I couldn't find one place where he referenced a rabbi or he referenced, and you know, I mean, you're a rabbi if you're teaching, but a rabbi in a sense of they're certified, they're vetted, and the schools at that time have classified them as rabbi, which would have been a doctor at their time. He doesn't do it. He doesn't go back and quote rabbi, you know, from the Gemara or the Talmud. And they're valid rabbis. If you go through secular history and pull up that Talmud, it's a very, very good document. I'm not saying read all 50,000 pages, but you know what I'm talking about. The rabbis will tell you, here's how we handled drinking wine in our day. Drunk as opposed to allowed to drink under the law. Here's how we handled the feasts. And you can find it in the Talmud. And it's very helpful because even in the Christian house today, to drink or not to drink, while you're allowed to drink, that's not the sin. The sin is being drunk, right? So the rabbis had to figure that out in the old days, so you can pull up the Talmud and it'll tell you exactly how they did it. Mix the wine with 2 quarters water at every feast. Then they can drink till the cows come home, and they only get to a joy level.
Right.
So Talmud is very practical. It's not.
They would say, I drink to that, huh?
Oh, yeah. I drink to that.
Practical application.
Very practical to stop the fighting, because in the Baptist camp we have, abstain from all drinking as opposed to, that's not what the Bible teaches. I think for optics, we probably should not be drinking if we're in leadership, right? Beyond having a drink at home or a party, that I have no problem with that. I mean drinking on a regular basis, because you're speaking for a king, a diplomat. Even growing up, going to the union halls and dinners and all that as a kid, various adults would point out, those men at that table, those men at that table, you notice there's no booze over there whatsoever. Those guys run the union, those are the officers. And I would think, surely they're going to have a glass of wine, everybody else is having a glass. No, not at all.
Maybe when they get home.
When they get home.
Or after everybody leaves. what is it?
Yep.
It's a perception.
It was, because they would have runners or ushers in the meeting, and even they were not allowed to touch anything. And those guys were watching them, and they're pretty heavy-handed guys. So, but, I mean, don't get me wrong, they were blue-collar guys. But in leadership, it fogs the mind. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But I think they were astonished, because a lot of old scholars will say the same thing. Notice Jesus didn't have to reference anybody. He didn't have to quote so-and-so to make himself valid. And he did it without sinning in the mind, and he did it without slip of speech. So when you start adding those together, and you run the stats on that, it's astronomically off the charts. I mean, that for me is astonishing. I thought, can't even approach that, I look at John, the book of John, first chapter, verses 1 and 14. And if you can't get there, I'll just read it to you. John 1 and 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So it's no kidding, Jesus could speak and be absolutely perfect, because he is the Word. Period. That's where it starts and stops. And verse 14, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Yes. So here you have Messiah in the flesh speaking the words of God. In the past, I used to see how many times Jesus, you can count them, they're all over the place. I speak the words God gave me. The words I give to you, I speak of the Father. I don't speak any of myself. And I used to think, okay, wow, he has to go and pray and download all of that stuff. But it might not really be true. Jesus is God. He is the Word. I don't think you had to download anything, so it's arguable. Did he prayed all night to get the messages for the next day? He might have told the Father this is what he's praying, but I'm beginning to think he didn't have to ask the Father for anything. He is the Word. He is the Word of God. So it's debatable. It's very debatable, but.
Well, Philippians 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
That he emptied himself, right? So maybe he had to.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. He may had go there and empty himself.
Who being in very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but took on the form of a servant.
Yeah. And that's a good argument, because being humble, maybe he did.
He had to be, right?
Yeah.
And being a living Word, he's also our example. So he had to live out.
That's a good point, too. Yeah, that's a real good
So
point.
we can see.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Both of those. I mean, just so many.
So much you can get out of it.
Yeah, there's so many slices on that truth. It's yeah. I mean, and this is a very simple Bible study today, but like I said, you start getting input, and it's like, and Chuck came right out with 2 cannon blasts. I didn't even thought about that. Better to reason together that's very good. So I kept hitting on that word astonished because he spoke under the law. He changed and improved the teachings of Moses yet never violated the law, all under the watchful eyes of his enemies. And they were the brightest, the best, the most zealous. All of those were checking every single word. I couldn't even imagine. And I don't think Jesus was checking his index. He was just speaking off the cuff, bang, bang, bang. All the while, the skeptics and the brilliant people can't quite hem him in on anything. And I think that's very astonishing. I even going through and writing a Bible study or a sermon for me, to get halfway through it and go back and edit and look and flush things out, this is a contradiction. Let me strike that. My argument. This is a contradiction. It's hard to even, like even presenting a message and thinking, does this harmonize with the rest of the Bible? I better make sure. I got to go back and comb through Psalm 119 or something, and
2 more hours.
there's 2 more hours, exactly. Coffee, please, yeah. I know. It's nice that we do this open and not so dogmatic, because already 3 shots today, bang, bang, bang. That could be in the teaching,
That's
for
the
sure.
things
Yeah.
that people got out of what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll present you a framework that we can argue over. And then I thought, astonished because, of course, the Holy Spirit, I would guess, moved through the crowd. It doesn't really say that, but it's a pattern of God. The Holy Spirit does work because he was soul winning as well. So the Holy Spirit is also moving through the crowd. And I thought about that. Many in the crowd are coming to the conclusion all of a sudden. The fog is finally lifting. That is the Messiah. There's no way he can. I thought about all these things he did before I came here. Raising the dead, this, that, and the other. Healing up the brokenhearted, like Isaiah said. Curing the blind. I thought about all that. And I heard tales about him calming the waves and all of this. And now what he's saying, he's taking the heavy, heavy, heavy doctrines of Moses from God and transforming them. This has got to be the Messiah. Was he born in Bethlehem? Yes. Was he raised in Nazareth? Yes. It's got to be the Messiah. And I think there were a few people in that crowd, and you know as well as I do, when you realize something like that, the fog lifts and this emotion comes in and overwhelms you. And you like step off onto a new beach and you're like, I've arrived. I've discovered this is the Christ. I had my moment in a work truck at night driving around. I don't think it was any different because I was absolutely astonished. A light bulb went off and I'm like, the first thoughts were, I am that guy. I haven't read much. I've read 3 or 4 or 5 books. I am that God hater. Oh my God, I'm the guy. If I were to die tonight, I'm going to be like, what about? And down I go. And that moment hit me there. And wisdom brought utter fear over me. So I had that moment. And I think people in the crowd were having that too. They showed up as a skeptic. And things began to lift. And bam. And so I think the Holy Spirit was probably working the crowd. Just a guess. I can't point to it in writing, but it makes sense. Astonished because not only that, but if you look at the setting they were in, that time frame, we're pretty much all aware of this. From the book of Malachi to the book of Matthew, that 400-year spread called the silent years. God did not speak from heaven. God did not send prophets. He told Malachi this is the last deal, and Kevin will be covering all that. This is the last deal. Here it is. As you move through that 400-year period, remember we talked about last year, God began to fulfill prophecy after prophecy. He moves military power from the east of the globe to the west of the globe. He moves the look of man and culture, short hair, slick, from the bearded east, robes and stuff like that. He moves the culture into the Western culture now. And he moves philosophy from the east into the west. You have the invasions of the Greek Empire, which almost happened immediately. They were talking about Greek influence in Malachi and Zechariah. So you have the invasions of Greece into that area. total culture change. The political parties, the Pharisees, the Sadducees arise out of all of that. Then you've got the next invasion of the Greeks fall, right? But from the Greeks, you have a couple of generals that took over the area. So they're fighting between Egypt and Syria and using Israel as a battleground, epoxy battleground. All of that horror show going on. Then the next step, the Romans invade, and now a new horror show. All of that, and then the book of Matthew opens up and Christ is born. So there was a lot of warfare, genocide, rape, murder, and it's in the cultural mindset of the time now. And Christ is born. So I would have been astonished just thinking, what a peaceful magic just happened. The Messiah's here. The Messiah's here. And I want that peace, you know. So I think people were astonished because of that as well. There's so many ways you can look at this. Why were they astonished? Well, those are some of the reasons. And this was not the first time that people were astonished over Jesus Christ. The book of Luke, chapter 2:46. Chapter 2:46. He astonished people at about 12 years old in the temple. 12 or 13 years old. I think the Bible does call the age out in that case. Was it 12?
I think.
Just before, like, probably his bar mitzvah. So, yeah, 12, 13. Verse 46. And it came to pass that after 3 days, Mary and Joseph found Jesus in the temple. Remember, they had been traveling and they lost track of him. There probably was 20, 30, 40 people with them in the caravan, and they lost track of him. And they found him sitting in the midst of the doctors, which would have been the PhDs of the time, the super-duper PhDs, if you will, both hearing them and asking them questions. Verse 47, and all, I'm guessing a crowd of 20 or so, all of the inner echelon there, the big guys, heard him and were astonished at his doctrine. Astonished, same word. Same word in the Greek and the English. They were astonished at his understanding at 12 years old and his answers. Take my word for it. You wouldn't have been allowed in that room. I don't care who you are. Maybe Nicodemus or somebody would have been allowed in there by appointment. How Jesus ended up in that spot, maybe it started out in the courtyard. You know, hey, little boy, where's your parents at? Da, 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 da. They brought him into the office. Da, 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 da. And then he began talking, and maybe the doctors overheard.
You guys got to see this.
Yeah, somehow he got in. And when he got in, the rest of the doctors drew in. And maybe it was just God appointed, but I find it very, very hard to find out, how did that little boy get into that inner room? And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou done this? And behold, and we know that answer. He was doing God's business. Verse 52, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in the favor of God and man. I'm here to tell you, I firmly believe, and I'm sure I'm missing some points, I firmly believe that he not only astonished them with his doctrine and his correction on their theology, but it was out of an absolute sinless mind. Even if you didn't have God's input, and I may be wrong because we don't have a lab to test it in, even without God's input, a perfect fleshly human being that has no interruptions in thought, no interruptions in wisdom, and no sin at 12 could probably astonish the biggest scientists on earth today, because they can totally reason down to the conclusion and remember it. So I'm of the opinion it was his flesh side that was doing this. And they were absolutely, and again, he's God and man, so I could be way wrong on that. But I believe it's possible. Now just think of the day he gave the speech, 25 plus years later. His wisdom didn't diminish. Verse 52 says his wisdom grew from that day forward. So you can only imagine exponentially now how incredibly super focused and correct even the flesh side of Jesus was. It's incredible. I don't even know if you can run the numbers on that because at 12 he was already knocking them dead. So astonished, absolutely. Who here today can attest to their own astonishment? I hit things every week and I'm blown away with, I'm so glad I'm on his side because sometimes I'll play devil's advocate and find holes. Let me follow this rabbi's arguments about how Christ appears to be, but he's not. And it ends up falling flat on his face. You can't even get 6 clicks down and you're like, whoa, that guy missed this whole pothole right here. Only Messiah could have done this. Run the numbers. It's 10 zillion to 1 that this prophecy could have came true. So I figure, I mean, what was your moment of astonishment? Was it when you became born again? Or did you see things along the way? Because I wasn't raised in the church, so for me it was kind of within a 1-year span that I got knocked down, you know. But I don't know if you guys had moments along the way.
Were you raised in Catholic church?
I had to attend Catholic church on the set days, you know, midnight mass and all that. But yeah, I guess I could say I was raised. But went to CCD, their Bible version of Bible study. Catechism. I went there. Oh, I was forced to go there for a year. I think I cut half the year. And then I was confirmed, and they put water on me and all of this stuff. And then it switched to, you know, if it wasn't in Polish, it was in bad English. So, yeah, I was.
As a child, we went, my mom, she would drag us, man.
Yeah.
Because after Swede left, she would walk us, you know, we'd walk, it was probably a 2-3 mile walk. Come on, Dad, we're going.
Yeah.
And, you know, I sit and think now, that when I was a little kid sitting in the Catholic Church, right? The teachings are the same teachings we had at the base.
At
Right?
the base,
Christ
yeah.
died for our sins, that he was buried, that he rose on the 3rd day.
Yeah.
Right? But there
Hey,
isn't
good morning.
But there isn't the emphasis. There isn't the emphasis.
Yeah, you're right. It's just like a tapestry.
But
or
the
something.
gospel is the same. You know, I remember being a little kid,
Yeah.
sitting up and looking at the front of the church, the crucifix. You know, if there was just a little more.
Yeah. They had all the window dressing.
This Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even, and I was, like, you know, just going there was a nightmare, but I did know one thing. I think the last days I was involved with the Catholics was probably, I don't know, 14. Well, I got confirmed, I got 14, but I know as a kid, not knowing God whatsoever, that I knew something was horribly wrong because not only were the worst people in the neighborhood there, but on top, and pretending like they were godly people, on top of that, I thought if they're here, and some of the questions I have as a kid I'm ridiculed about, there ain't no way God's here. I knew that. God is not in this building. I don't care what trappings they have around here. I don't know who this guy in the booth is over here. I'm not going to see him because he looks a little strange. I wasn't buying it, man. And I went wholeheartedly into, not atheism, but
Just living.
yeah. You
Living
know,
for
and
the-
if
living
it
for
comes
the
to
day.
life and death, it's Machiavellian, you know, so bad for you, you know, wherever you're going, you're going. I, you know, had a real evil thought on that. So I didn't see nothing in there. But you're right, at the baseline, looking at it now, they have all the trappings of the Bible. They have PhDs, which blows me away, I think. And the funny thing is, I've heard from quite a few on the radio accidentally that have walked away from, now they won't say they did, but they teach an awful lot like a Bible teacher. And I often think they're hiding out in the Catholic Church. Well, I'll pray for that guy because he probably is saved and he can't get out, you know. I mean, I'm telling, yeah, so, you know, it was all there, of course, and they try to put a market on it. You can just do a simple history test and look when the Catholic Empire evolved, It was a few hundred years after they crushed Jerusalem, more than that. But I think it looks to be that they emigrated from the Babylonian area to the Etruscan area of Italy. You can tie it. They're the same. The robes came with them. A lot of the rituals came with them. And then when Rome falls, they take the title of Pomptimus Maximus. So all those trappings from Babylon that have been found in the digs over there ended up in Rome as well. Even the colors of the robes of the cardinals. So there's no mystery. There's a tie back to the Middle East. So they can claim that they invented, Peter, and there's another one there. Most Catholic scholars now that I've heard from on the radio totally stay away from that topic. The Bible assigned Peter to the Jews over and over and over. The only way Peter went to Rome is for his execution. So to argue that Peter was the first pope is pie in the sky on steroids. There's no academic evidence whatsoever to substantiate that. So, well, he might have. Yeah, well, there might be Martians over in Pennsylvania too, but the fact of the matter is that you can't stand on it, So, anybody? Yeah, I'm just open for commentary now. I mean, you guys know my story. I mean, I was astonished. I was blown away driving my phone truck at night, just hearing somebody read what I thought was a history book over the radio, over and over and over. I know about this battle. I know about that. What's that all about? Who's Messiah? I had no clue what Messiah meant, But yeah, and as the weeks went by, and that radio station, by the way, ended up being taken over by a heretic. And for years, the Bible group was still teaching on there. But this Harold Camping guy ended up taking over the whole thing. Now, he went south. I remember hearing him a few years back, and he wasn't preaching that kind of doctrine. So with him aside, the programs that he purchased and ran on that station were legit. Yeah, the ones I heard through the Bible. And that's what won me.
There was one, the family radio. There was a dude like, my alarm would go off way back, 30-some years ago. He would be on at 6 o'clock, this man from New York. Mm-hmm. And he was rock solid.
Yeah, exactly.
Rock solid teacher. I listened to him every morning.
I was one over in 1999 in September listening to that station, and I don't remember Harold Camping. I know he predicted the end of the world back in '88 or something strange, right. But I didn't know much about him. I was looking for the scholars that they were running every hour. That guy sounds legitimate. I'll go track him down. Yeah, so the program went south, but it was a Family Bible Radio, I think and they would read them verbatim and then discuss, and yeah, so I've taken a Catholic Bible at church and shown people. All right, what's this say? What's that? How about this over here? How about this? Does this contradict the teaching inside the Catholic Church? Yeah, it does contradict. All right, I'm not attacking your Catholic Church. This is the source text. If it doesn't emanate from the source, throw it out. Because the Catholic Church was a Johnny-come-lately after this. So was the Mormons, and so were the Baptist Church, and so was the Methodist Church. So if they're not in line with the source text, you better bring them back to center line or drop them all together. Nothing new under the sun. They were doing it all through the Old Testament too. Inventing these sincere, legitimate religions to try and follow what the Mosaic Law said. And after a while, it went horribly south. Jettison it. Get rid of it, yeah. And I don't care if the Catholic Empire sends 40 hitmen down here. Pick up the Islamists while you're at it and bring them on down. Because the armies I know are far more powerful than anything they can muster up. So it is what it is. And I'm not picking on any church in particular. If you're not coming out of the source text, go play that game somewhere else. Because this is what saves mankind, not a religion. So.
It was the Catholic Bible I read for the first time.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
ESV or something like that.
ESV, yep.
English Standard Version.
It's pretty darn close.
But
Yeah.
it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God.
Yeah. I'll say you could probably have that Bible in here and we can teach just fine.
Right.
So.
Right. Absolutely.
Mormons, you know, they have a King James version,
They do,
but
Yep.
they have their supplement.
they do.
And that's-
Another testament.
Yeah,
That's what-
Mormons,
that's what it's
that's
called.
where things go south.
That's what
Yeah,
it's called.
they put their traditions over the,
And like you were saying last week, Paul said, if I or an angel from heaven
Yeah.
preach you a gospel other than what you have received from me, let them be eternally.
yeah, that's a high mark, man. Yeah, that ends the whole argument. Yeah,
That ends it.
it really does. I mean, you know,
Bible's the word, it's it.
And Paul preached
The word.
Christ crucified, buried, and risen. That's the gospel.
One question.
yeah.
What was the denomination that was the underground church back in the day?
I call them biblical Christians. When somebody asks me, what denomination are you? I tell them I'm a biblical Christian.
Well, then.
But it confuses them.
Then they call them the way.
I think they did call them the way.
The way. In
Yeah,
the book of
I
Acts.
think, yep, or the branch, yeah, the
The
way.
way.
But I think the way was the best answer. I've seen that. And God talks about in the way, and so, yeah, that's probably the way. Yeah.
Has that mutated to like the Baptist?
I'm sure, you know, and I'm not knocking the Baptists either. They've been very, I started off under Messianic Jewish teaching, which you wouldn't even know the difference. It's Baptist teaching. I'm not saying Hebrew roots. That's something else. But yeah, so I don't know. I think Baptist is a very innocent, legitimate term to put on something because we're supposed to be with like-minded believers. You know,
It's just a name.
it's just a different name, so it solves the arguing and the bickering and all of that. We're all going to heaven if you have a good denomination. But if you have a religion, let's just say it's, I guess I'll pick on another one. Let's just say it's Christian Science religion, who have all these crazy things going on. Hey, my friend, I don't think there's any salvation going on in that place.
No.
So, you know,
Almost back down, the denomination is a name.
yeah.
Depends on their doctrine, how they preach. Do they preach out of the Bible? Do they believe in the Trinity? You know, are they saved through the blood of Christ?
Yeah, and I think it's fine. There's a fine line between that and what you saw Apollos and Paul and all those guys getting in trouble. And Paul's like, look, some of you are saying you follow Apollos, some of you are saying you follow me. Apollos, probably by that time, he had his own church somewhere. And Apollos might as well have been an apostle. The apostles quoted him. So they were all legit. But he was saying, what's going on? You're forming heresies here,
Right.
denominations.
Right.
Right? And it's legit. I mean, I do agree with getting together with like-minded believers. You may have to put on the door, we're no longer Baptists, now we're a Christian Bible, I don't know. I mean, it's innocent. It is innocent. I don't knock it. But yeah, there's a fine line, I guess, between, and I think you have to be bold enough to have some guys on board to say, hey, we've gone too far south on this policy. The Bible says that. If you go too far left or right, you got to get together, yell at each other for a little while, and bring your policy back in the center line. No one's going to hell out of a lot of these differences. I talked to my first time, stop me if you have anything to say, I'm just chattering. I stopped in at the wrong place for the baptism yesterday at the Baptist church up the street and had a chat with the cleaning folks. Cleaning folks typically know everything, and they're very biblical, and that was the case with them, at least in my short time. And right away out of her mouth, I don't know why we all don't just get together, man. I said, you know what, ma'am, we talk about that in our church down the road. It's silly anymore. There's so many minor differences between the Baptist denominations. It's silly. We should all be in one building. Okay, you want to dance? Don't call me on Friday night. I don't believe in dancing. That's fine. That's fine. You want to drink? Don't call me. But for the most part, the Baptist churches have divided so many times, and now it's just a distraction. In my opinion, just jettison the name. Put General Bible Church or whatever. But whatever interferes with the gospel makes me very nervous. But, there's trouble with that. A lot of people think a non-denominational church is a circus. So I don't know what the answer is. Whatever the men vote on, I'm probably going to go with it. Anyway, anybody? What is your name, sir?
Rudy Mercado.
Rudy?
Yes.
I thought you've been here before.
I came once, yes.
Good, bienvenido. That's,
Thank you.
bienvenido. Yeah, so I mean, that's that. We were just talking, that's how we do our Bible studies. We'll do about 15 minutes, present the framework, and go around the room, and I have to take notes because there's a lot of smart folks in the crowd. So you speak up whenever you need to in the Bible study. So welcome anyway. Welcome. Well, everybody is early today. And look, I have no watch. You know? So, all right. Kevin, can you pray for us and close
Yes.
out Bible study?
Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for this lesson this morning, Father. Help us to go home and study these words of yours and see where they fit in our lives. Please be with the Sunday morning service. And 10, Father, work your spirit through here and touch hearts and change lives. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Amen. Chuck, I gotta hand it to you. That was pretty good. That was
And
very
I got
good.
another one too. A conception.
What is it?
Conception.
Conception, yeah. I'm gonna make a note about that. That was good. I hadn't even heard scholars talk about that one. Yeah, it was pretty good.
That just popped in my mind there.
Yep.